Hi there guys, it's me, Michael V, back with another review of a Mortal Kombat product. This time we're going to take a look at the Brady Games Mortal Kombat Deception Strategy Guide. Before I start this review, I want to take a moment to let you guys know that Mortal Kombat Deception is a game that holds a very important place in my heart. By far, I feel Mortal Kombat Deception is one of the most underrated games of all time due to the sheer amount of content. I've played through Mortal Kombat Conquest more times than I can count, and considering the fact that Conquest is a side game off of a full game, it's pretty ridiculous how much entertainment I've gotten out of that one thing. Not to mention the fact that Mortal Kombat Deception also has Puzzle Combat, which is another side game that is basically Puzzle Fighter with a Mortal Kombat twist, and it also has Chess Combat, which is essentially the game of chess, but instead of when you take a square, you have to fight one round of Mortal Kombat. As if all that content wasn't enough, there's actually a whole fighting game on the CD as well, and Mortal Kombat Deception, it's a damn good fighting game. That's all I can really say before I go into a long, lengthy review of that game. We aren't talking about Mortal Kombat Deception, we're talking about the Brady Games Strategy Guide that came out at the same time as the video game itself. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. Yep, that's a strategy guide. To be completely honest, calling this book a strategy guide is a bit of a stretch. The point of a strategy guide for a fighting game is to give you the information, tips, and tricks that would have taken you a long time to figure out otherwise within the game. The problem is this book doesn't do that. What's the number one reason why you would buy a Mortal Kombat strategy guide? Fatalities. This book does not include every single person's fatality. Even worse, oftentimes it doesn't even give one fatality for a character. For example, here we have Havoc, the Cleric of Chaos, and his entire section does not include a single fatality. Every Mortal Kombat fatality has choreography in this game, so you either need to be close to your opponent, about quote sweep distance, half screen, full screen. These are all terminologies that Mortal Kombat players have come to get used to. And for the characters that they do tell you what their fatalities are, for instance I have Cobra here, and they have one of his fatalities, they do not tell you the choreography. So once again, you have to mess around way too much, considering the fact that you bought the strategy guide to kind of cut out all that searching for the secrets and Easter eggs and stuff. For every character you have a complete list of their combos that you can do, which would be nice if it wasn't for the fact that the game itself has all of these combos in the start menu. So if you press start on Mortal Kombat Deception during a fight and you go to move list, you can see all of your combos right there. Now each combo has its own name, which brings me to the other problem with this strategy guide. This strategy guide takes time to show you some other cool combos, but my major gripe with it is that they call the moves individually by their name. To help you understand the frustration of this, in this strategy guide, here we have a combo for Kira. It says Leaping Power Punch, Red Beauty. So I have to go over to this other page. Let's see here, they said that's for her Kenpo style. And I have to look down to find her Leaping Power Punch. Okay, so now I know that that's her Leaping Power Punch. So what I'm getting at here is that you actually have to know the name of a bread and butter combo, or just like a bread and butter punch, really. I mean, just a punch. As opposed to them putting in notations like 1, 2, 3, 4, or possibly, you know, A, B, X, Y, or whatever they wanted to put down. Long and short of it, they couldn't have made it more complicated to actually read the strategy guide. The strategy guide doesn't show you everyone's fatality. It doesn't show you all the combos. So you'd expect it to at least have the character bios, and that is also missing from this book. As a Mortal Kombat fan, the story is something that's kept me in the game for a long time. I love the gameplay, but the story is the closest thing to my heart, oddly enough. And the fact that I got this strategy guide and I can't just read someone's biography right out of the strategy guide, kind of a shame. They do have strategy tips for every single character. My problem is, you see this page? These are all combos that are already in the game. These are all special moves that are already in the game that you can see. It's this little essay, these tiny group of paragraphs. This is all the strategy they give you for the character. And even then, the strategy is really general. Of course it would be general because they can't tell you every single matchup, but then again, why can't they tell me every single matchup? This is a strategy guide. As I briefly mentioned at the beginning of this video, Conquest is one of my favorite parts of this game. And I love it because there's so many little secret things you can find, so many side missions, and so many inside jokes that honestly only some of the most hardcore Mortal Kombat fans will get. And I would expect the strategy guide to cover some of these more harder to find things, but it doesn't. It does have a whole section here on Conquest. The problem is, it just tells you from one main mission to the other, and doesn't really give you much detail about each particular mission. Another reason why this is ridiculous, of course, is because in Conquest, there is a giant green beam of light in the sky that marks wherever your next mission is. So you never are in wonder of what do you need to do next. Of course, you can do the side missions and things like that, but as far as your next main mission to progress the story, it is always marked, it's always very easy to see. And so, once again, there's no reason to have this strategy guide in order to play Conquest. While we're on the topic of Conquest, there's a character in the game by the name of Sujinko. Awesome character who's been trained by the majority of the Mortal Kombat characters. And he's also the main character of the game Conquest in Mortal Kombat Deception. In order to unlock all of his moves, you have to traverse the realms in the Conquest mode of this game and collect his special moves. Some of them are right there out in the open, while other of them are really obscure. For instance, I think it's Liu Kang's that you have to be in a particular place at a particular time of the day and of the week, and then it's going to appear for about an hour, which is about 10 minutes, I think, in the game. Correct me if I'm wrong, YouTube. So, his special moves are really hard to find, and this strategy guide doesn't tell me where they are either. So perhaps there's some advantage to the maps that are inside of this book. Actually, no, not at all. The maps that are featured inside this book can also be accessed through the in-game menu during Conquest as well. So, once again, completely useless. The book does, however, take the time to look at every single stage, especially the ones that have stage fatalities in them, and kind of detail some of the hazards of each stage. But in the tradition of this strategy guide, it's very, very vague, very general information, and nothing really that you couldn't figure out after spending a couple hours with the game. As I mentioned before, Puzzle Combat is essentially Mortal Kombat's take on the Street Fighter game Puzzle Fighter. And oddly enough, the Brady Games strategy guide for Mortal Kombat Deception goes into great detail about Puzzle Combat and cool strategies that you can use. It starts off with the general stuff like general strategy, how to play the games, and what each piece means within the game. And then it actually goes on to detail each character and the advantages and disadvantages of choosing that character. Honestly, if they went through this much trouble for Puzzle Combat, it's kind of ridiculous that they didn't go through that much trouble for the actual game. So with all this negativity that I've thrown out about this book, why on earth do I have it? Other than the fact that I'm just a Mortal Kombat collector. Well, there is one reason to put your hands on this book, and that is when this game came out, there was plans to make a amazing Mortal Kombat comic book. And the word was, at least around the internet, that there would be a series of comic books that would be hitting the shelves of my local comic book shop that would detail the story of Mortal Kombat Deception, which would have been absolutely phenomenal. However, because of one reason or another, that comic book was never made. But if you get this strategy guide, you can take a look at some of the earliest art for the comic book. And to be completely honest, this art is breathtaking. It's a real shame this comic book series was never made. If you pick up the collector edition controllers for Mortal Kombat Deception, it has a full color rendering of the prototype comic book, essentially issue 00. Like I said, the art for this comic book was amazing, and it's a damn shame that it never came out. So, overall, what do I think of this strategy guide? Well, it doesn't give you any fatalities, it doesn't give you any real tips or insight on Mortal Kombat Conquest, which is a huge part of this game. It doesn't really go into any great strategy about the characters. And honestly, the fact that they spent the time to give a strategy on puzzle combat, which was a very small part of the game and completely optional, but didn't cover something as complex as Conquest, that's a real slap in the face to anybody who actually bought this strategy guide in hopes of getting a strategy guide. As far as collectors are concerned, I'm always going to say this probably is one that should be in your collection because you can get that early art for Mortal Kombat, the Mortal Kombat comic book that was never released. But for anybody else at all, there's no reason to pick up this strategy guide. So as a strategy guide, it's pretty. So I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. So until next time, this is Michael V talking about awesome Mortal Kombat stuff.